Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, fueling philanthropic programs and dedicated to creating educational and professional opportunities for Alaska Native people.
The National Weather Service.
And good Wednesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 23rd of November now, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that in a number of ways, whether that's online at weather.gov/Alaska, or if you'd like to localize your experience right off the top, go to weather.gov/Fairbanks, or weather.gov/Anchorage, or weather.gov/Juneau. You can also give a call to 1-800-472-0391, or if you need some aviation weather, you'll find it at weather.gov/AAWU, Alaska Aviation Weather Unit for short. And send us an email. If you can't find what you're looking for, we're happy to help you. And this long email address is a way to reach the TV desk team, and we're happy to serve you in that way. nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov is a great way to reach us. And of course, there's a contact email link at the bottom of each of those web pages as well. Just a quick reminder, our show times now are 5:30 live on ARCS and KUAC UAF TV on 9.4 there around the Fairbanks region. 360 North has us on at 7:30 each night, 7 days a week now, including Sundays, of course, which is new. So thanks to 360 North and all the viewers there on that channel. And Alaska Public Media, you'll find us in the following morning at 5 o'clock, but you can find us on YouTube even earlier between about 7 and 8 o'clock each evening there. So search for AKwx TV or go to weather.gov/Alaska, click on the TV button there, and you'll find a YouTube section that has our very latest broadcast for you there. Here's a look at what's going on around our region. As we look at Southwest and South Central, the weather is changing just in time for Thanksgiving. It will be snowing in southwestern Alaska starting tomorrow afternoon. It looks like we will see snow in the day. Snow begins during the daytime and progresses eastward, and a low pressure system will intensify across the Gulf. And as it does, it's probably going to lower visibility. We'll have some gustier winds around 35 miles per hour, probably bringing visibility down below about a half mile. So travel could be a little tricky there. If you're going back and forth between some of the villages there, or even around Bethel, you'll probably see some changes during the day as that snow starts to set in. For South Central, we still think there's going to be enough warm air that you'll see a rain and snow mix along the northern and western Gulf Coast, and some of the communities there like Seward down toward Kodiak. Cordova will probably be right there on that edge, as you always are, but Valdez and places inside of Prince William Sound will likely have a better chance of snow. But snow begins Thursday night and into Friday for many, and that does include the Anchorage Bowl, parts of the Kenai Peninsula, and the Matanuska and the Susitna Valley. So things are going to change as we get into Thanksgiving out in the west, and then that will gradually move eastward as we get into Thursday night and Friday for everyone else. So as a result of all that, for right now, a winter weather advisory is posted for the Kuskokwim Delta. That does include most of the outer coast there. Watch for about 1 to 4 inches of snow and gusty winds from the south, about 35 miles per hour. The advisory begins around 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon and will go until midnight, very early Friday morning. Right now, there are no warnings, watches, or advisories posted for anywhere in south central Alaska at this point, but stay tuned. Here's a look at the satellite picture as we check on what's going on in the Gulf. You can see another wave of low pressure that's already sitting there and churning up more wet and southerly warm air. I'm moving that into southeastern Alaska. Periods of showers will be expected to move northward with that. One thing to keep in mind is as the system out in the west, the one that's bringing the snow to southwest and south central, as that continues working its way eastward, it is going to move more cold air and more wet weather across southeastern coast. So as we get into Friday night and into Saturday, we'll be watching for some weather changes here across southeast as well. The other thing this is doing is grabbing onto some colder air. Now, for many of us, it has not been a typical really cold November and soon to be December. However, low pressure is nothing more than a vacuum, and with cold air aplenty up across the Arctic, just not over Alaska yet, it does look like this low pressure wave will start to grab into some of that colder air, and you already got the stage set. High pressure sitting up there. You can see the northerly movement of the winds coming in all the way across the North Slope, so we just give it a little bit of an extra push, and things are going to cool down a little bit more up across the north and eastern coast as we get into this weekend and as we get into next week. You're going to see some big cold settle in across some of the flatlands there, the Yukon, and across the central and eastern interior. Not really nasty record-breaking cold, but maybe something a little bit more typical, or maybe even just a skosh below normal. So a little bit of a change there. The satellite picture once again showed generally dry conditions though for the interior. A lot of what we're picking up right now is cold air with the infrared satellite picture, as a visible satellite picture just isn't so useful when the sun is not up. And you can see many in southwest, south central, and the interior. We're looking at a generally clear and fair weather at this point. Here's a look at the surface map. That's a little bit better there. With high pressure in charge of the Yukon, 1,016 millibars. Temperatures have been cold today. Fort Yukon was well below zero, as was Eagle and Northway and Fairbanks today. Low pressure around the Bering Strait at 1,006 millibars, churning up a few snow showers for the western end of St. Lawrence Island. Across the Gulf, here's our low pressure system with 981 millibars, the central lowest core there of low pressure across areas just west of Haida Gwaii. This is slowly working its way north and westward, and low pressure out in the west also digging in at 972 millibars. The winds will come up across the western chain as we go through tonight and tomorrow. What we're watching for is that ridge of high pressure that's slowing things down and keeping things fairly stable across the west coast tonight to kind of give up the ghost. And as that happens, this area right here will become the triple point between warm air, cold air, and where it's already mixing in. That's the purple line we've drawn in here, the occlusion. This will start to take on a circulation, and that's what's going to help churn up snow across southwestern Alaska and eventually the northern parts of the Gulf. Now, for southeastern Alaska, we've already got some light rain moving through, a chance for some rain and snow showers there around the capital city after you saw a little bit more than an inch yesterday. And across most of the mainland, it's going to be a clear and generally cold night there. You might see some patches of clouds across the central interior. And out west, there's a chance of snow for the western chain. Now with the jet stream working right over the surface system, you'll notice this is kind of spreading the front out and kind of pushing it forward. As a result of that, there will be some stronger winds down behind that, mixing into that cold air across the central and western chain with periods of moderate snow across the west, rain and snow across the central and western Bering, and then here's our snow across the western coast. The winds will be strongest across the coastline, of course, and some of those may gust up to 35 miles per hour, reducing visibility as it snows. Now look out across southeast. You'll still see a chance of showers across many parts of central and southern southeast as we go through your Thanksgiving Day. And around Juneau and just south of Sitka, there's a risk of some rain and snow showers. A lot of that will be to the south. For many in the interior, you'll look out to the west and you'll see the clouds advancing, but it does look like a generally dry day around south central Alaska for the Anchorage Bowl, the Parks Highway, as well as many in the Kenai Peninsula and inside of Prince William Sound and the interior. The North Slope, you might see some fog and a few flurries, but generally a typical day with cooler northerly winds across the Beaufort Seacoast and a little bit more of an easterly flow that's picking up as you move down the Chukchi Coast toward Point Hope and Point Lay. For Friday, look for periods of fog and flurries there, and the north and easterly winds will continue in the north. But for the Gulf of Alaska, low pressure is setting up shop, and it looks like this will be the kind of the page turner into a more active pattern for many. Obviously, there's one system here. There's another one that quickly takes the place out in the central and western chain. For what's going on in southeast, we'll focus on some rain and snow potential there. Watch for rain a little bit further across the southern coastline and out over the open waters at 994 millibars. This should be enough to push some snow into the Anchorage Bowl and the Kenai Peninsula, as well as the Matanuska and Susitna Valley. You'll continue to see snow showers across the YK Delta, some of that reaching into the Norton Sound region and St. Lawrence Island, as well as points southward almost to St. Paul and St. George. As we look out to the west and south, a 970 millibar low there will churn up some southerly winds across the central and eastern chain. Behind that, wrapping in cold air. And some stronger winds. Watch for some snow working across the central and western chain as we go through your Friday. Once again, no winter weather watches, warnings, or advisories posted for any part of the Gulf at this point, but a winter weather advisory is posted for the Kuskokwim Delta, which does include Bethel. The main focus of that will be out across the coastline, of course. For tonight and tomorrow, we're going to see temperatures like this across southeast. Look for readings in the mid to upper 30s to mid 40s. Sitka was 46 today. Ketchikan, Metlakatla, all in the mid 40s. Around Prince William Sound, teens and 20s there. Some of the coldest temps around Valdez. Some of the warmest out around Middleton Island at 41, 21 in Anchorage, 38 in Homer. It was 11 below in Fairbanks today, 5 below for Eagle, and 26 below in Fort Yukon. 2 above in Kaktovik, 6 above in Barrow, 9 for Kivalina and Kotzebue, 19 in Shishmaref, and it was 3 above in Nome. 17 above for Unalakleet, 9 above in Galena, and Tanana saw 3, but it was 5 below as you get out toward McGrath, Grayling, Sparivant. Temperatures all above 0 there, 10 above in Bethel, and it was 28 around St. Lawrence Island and Savunga. As you get into southwest, you can see temps in the 20s and 30s. Lake Iliamna also in the 20s today. Moving into the Alaska Peninsula from Cold Bay to False Pass and Sandpoint, all those readings were in the 40s. As you get out toward Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, it was 42, 38 for St. Paul, 1 degree cooler in St. Paul. St. George, I should say, and lower 40s for Adak and Atka. I'm already thinking about Turkey. And 38 degrees in Shemya there this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Now for low temperatures. How cold will it go? 25 below in Arctic Village, 9 below for Anaktuvik Pass, -4 it looks like for Kaktovik, 2 above in Barrow, 9 above in Barrow. Mashed potatoes now. 9 above in Nome, 9 below in McGrath, and South Central you're looking at mid to upper teens. 33 in Kodiak, with southeast expecting lows in the upper 20s to mid 30s. Some of the warmest weather, of course, down around Ketchikan and Annette. Sandpoint about 32. St. Paul, got that right, 36 degrees, and 32 out in Shemya, with Nunivak Island showing 14 with a high of 32 tomorrow. On Thanksgiving Day, it'll be 40 in Kodiak. Gulf Coast temperatures in the 20s and 30s into southeast. From Sitka southward toward the outer coast, low 40s there, the capital city in the upper 30s. South Central, probably looking at 0 around Valdez to about 20 in Anchorage, 22 for Talkeetna, 1 below in Fairbanks, and 7 below for Eagle, with Fort Yukon at 13 below, 19 below in Arctic Village, 20 below for Anaktuvik Pass. Single digits, maybe around Barrow, that's above 0 all the way down toward Wainwright, but 5 to 10 below for the Beaufort Sea Coast, 10 above down the Chukchi Coast and into Point Hope and Point Lay you go, 15 above for Nome, and the southwestern coast in the upper 20s there. Nunivak Island, 32 with St. Paul at 39. IFR conditions are expected to linger across the North Slope in the morning with southeast. Seeing gradual clearing there. Look for some improvements across southern southeast as we go. And out west, hit and miss across the outer coast for MVFR in the morning. Watch for that to worsen. Ceilings and visibility will worsen along the Bering Sea coast as the front moves ashore there. So watch for that across the YK Delta. Get around and get your moving done early. If you have to travel, watch for snow to set in during the day. IFR conditions are expected across the North Slope, especially across the central and eastern coastal plain, again with improvements in visibility and ceilings there across southeast through the afternoon. Your pass conditions, the main passes look pretty good. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass, VFR expected there throughout Thanksgiving Day. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect VFR there. And for Rainy Pass, Windy Pass, all looking to see VFR conditions. Isabel Pass should be VFR. Mentasta Pass, VFR conditions for you. If you're going through Tenita Pass, things look pretty good through most of the day. Remember, the snow will set in later on in the nighttime hours, so Thanksgiving Day travel in South Central should be pretty good. Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see marginal conditions to start, but improvements quickly during the daytime. Freezing levels, obviously the cold is winning. The surface freezing lines down around the Gulf Coast, and then takes a jog north of the Pribilofs, with the warm air aloft generally south of the Aleutians. Levels there from 4,000 to 6,000 feet and higher, and the 2,000 foot freezing line right over just south of Sitka, actually through Gustavus and right on over Homer and in through Bristol Bay. So certainly some warm air to be had, but most of it's out of reach. Icing potential shows some low-level icing, a light to isolated moderate across the North Slope there with that freezing fog, and from the Gulf of Anadyr all the way across the Alaska Peninsula from 1 to about 4,000 feet. Again, most of that will be light to isolated moderate throughout the day, and just offshore of Port Alexander above 5,000 feet, and out across the western Bering also a little bit higher up. A look at the jet stream shows that powerful storm track has shifted a little bit, 150 to 160 knots here, right over the chain. That has shifted upward, and now with that pointed into Bristol Bay and also kind of leading the charge into the Gulf of Alaska, we'll probably see an more active pattern for the west coast, for the chain, and for parts of the Gulf of Alaska, including even South Central. A look up north shows a pronounced trough now digging pretty much due south. What does that mean? The door has been opened for colder air across the Arctic, and that means if you've been looking for some cold across the interior, you're probably going to find it in not too long. 9,000-foot winds, northerlies coming in at 20 to 30 knots. There across the north slope, you have stronger westerlies moving across the chain in the Bering Sea, 50 to 60 knots, 75 just south of the chain. A ridge of high pressure slowly moving away out of the Gulf, anywhere from 15 to 40 knots there from the south and west over Kodiak Island, and low pressure still trying to control the southeast coast with winds coming in from the south and east about 10 to 20 knots. 3,000 feet, you've got a north and easterly flow coming in at 10 to as strong as 25 knots on the south side of high pressure. Westerlies are still strong across the chain, anywhere from 50 to 55 knots. Southeasterlies moving over southeast at about 10 to 20, and light winds across the interior with stronger winds from the south across the western coast at 30 knots. Turbulence should be focused on the western Brooks Range below 4,000 feet and across the Alaska Peninsula and the chain below 4,000 feet tomorrow. Again, light isolated chop expected there with no major or significant problems noted elsewhere for your Thanksgiving day. Fly safe, be careful, have fun with family, and we'll talk to you about the Marines here in just a few minutes. Stay with us.
Okay, go ahead. I'll get my
Man overboard on the starboard! Don't take your eye off of him! I'll get the signal fall! Still got him in sight? Okay. Where'd he go? Still got him! Okay. Hold on. Okay. Get the line on as soon as you can. He's got something to hold on to.
Okay, a little more to starboard.
Okay. Hard starboard.
How you doing, Hank? Okay?
Okay, give him a hand there.
Come in line.
Put the line again. Line out there. Okay, throw. Let me know when you got the line up. Hydraulics going on.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, we got it. Coming up.
Got it.
People who live in the north, who live, work, and play on or near cold water or in cold weather, should be ready to deal with hypothermia. To know what it is, know how to prevent it, how to recognize it, and how to treat it.
Whether you realize it or not, most of us have been hypothermic at one time or another. When was the last time you shivered from the cold? Did it take hours or just a few minutes? Hypothermia can develop slowly or very quickly.
Hypothermia is an injury that is just beginning to be understood by modern scientists. Hypothermia is the lowering of the body core temperature. The core is the critical inner portion of the body, including the heart, brain, and lungs. The core is where life remains if there is any chance for survival.
Before you can understand hypothermia, you need to know that the circulatory system controls the body temperature much like a hot water heating system does in a home. When the arms or legs get cold, the core sends warm blood out to rewarm them. The core can't afford to send out more warm blood without cooling itself. It then reduces blood flow to these areas in order to minimize its own heat loss. However, if too much heat is lost from the body, it will die. We can prevent hypothermia in two ways: by adding heat or by making our shelter more efficient to prevent the loss of body heat. Clothes are our most efficient shelter to protect our body from the environment. If our clothing is adequate, our body core temperature can be maintained by body heat alone. and not require another heat source. If our clothing is inadequate, we add a little water, a little wind. You can see how dangerously cold people can get. The main areas of the body to protect from heat loss are the head, neck, armpits, sides, and groin, because they are the areas of greatest heat loss. The old saying to cover your head when your feet get cold makes a lot of sense if you know that over half of the body heat loss is through the head. You know, it's really sad that people spend hundreds of dollars on recreational gear, but only a fraction of that on adequate clothing. Clothing that could protect them from a dangerous and common killer, cold. The best prevention for hypothermia is to stay dry. If you're wet, get dry. If you're in the water, get out, or at least get as much of your body out as possible. Water will rob the body's heat 25 times faster than air at the same temperature. If you're in the water without a survival suit, to slow heat loss, keep the head and neck out of the water. The best way to do that is to wear some type of protective flotation device or lifesaver that keeps the head and neck up. Another important posture protects the groin and armpits from cold water circulation. This is the heat escape lessening posture called the help position. For a group, a good posture is to huddle. It protects the armpits and groin and keeps non-flowing water in the center, which increases survival time. A posture to avoid is one called drown-proofing. This is where you put your hands behind your back, you deep breathe, and you bob underwater. This will work in warm water. In these cold Alaska waters, it won't work any time of the year. You actually lose body heat faster because your neck and your head is underwater. You can also keep more of your body out of the water by clinging to something. Another person, a part of the boat, a log, even a floating dead friend. He can save your life. If help is close by, don't swim. It will reduce your survival time in cold water. Each stroke you swim circulates cold water around your body. Your ability to swim becomes less each time you stroke. In midwinter 30 to 33 degree water, it's doubtful that a person could swim more than 50 feet.
Okay, take him in. Get those clothes off him.
How do you recognize that someone is hypothermic? The symptoms of hypothermia include feeling cold, shivering, the loss of coordination, slurred or unusual speech, confusion, impaired judgment, and near the end, feelings of warmth and euphoria, sort of a natural high. In time, the person becomes unconscious. The heart beats erratically, resulting in death by what appears to be a heart attack. In the field, you don't have a means of measuring body core temperature and other vital signs. You cannot rely on symptoms alone to decide how severe the case of hypothermia is. For example, some people don't shiver, and also the victim may not believe he has hypothermia. If a person is improperly sheltered from cold or wet conditions, and he might be hypothermic, it makes good sense to treat him for hypothermia.
Hey, Red, give me a hand.
Time for a quick ice update. We have more ice across the northern Cook Inlet there. Nothing really out into the main inlet just yet. And along Bristol Bay, a lot of this across the southern areas will get chewed up with stronger southerly winds probably in the next couple days. But around Norton Sound, Kotzebue Sound, ice is expanding, and it's certainly expanding across the Chukchi Coast. And with northerly winds and cold weather there, look for more expansion to come in the next couple days. Weather.gov/Anchorage/ice for more information there. Across southeast, watch for a chance of thunderstorms outside of the Dixon entrance across the southern outer coast. 30 knots with southeasterlies, 15-knot winds there. Northerlies across most of the inside waters. 25 knots with a 4 to 5 foot sea, 7 foot seas inside of Clarence Strait, and an offshore flow from Sitka northward up toward Yakutat. 25 to 30 knots with 9 to 14 foot seas. Look for a southerly wind to develop as we get into Friday, responding to the low pressure system out across the west. Look for winds on the inside, 15 to 20. The outer coast, 15 to 25 in most areas with 9 to 11 foot seas as we head through Friday. For south central northwesterlies all around the northern and western Gulf Coast, 25 inside of Prince William Sound with 4 foot seas there, 20 to 30 outside of Kodiak Island and across the Barrens. Look for 8 foot seas over the Barrens and east of Kodiak Island, 3 to 4 foot seas across Cook Inlet, and 4 foot seas inside of Prince William Sound on Thanksgiving Day. Northeasterlies turn into Prince William Sound, 20 knots with a 3 foot sea. North and northeasterlies down Cook Inlet, 15 to 25, 6 foot seas over the western Barrens, 10 foot seas east of the Barren Islands at 30 knots and 40 knots east of Kodiak Island with a 14 foot sea expected. Otherwise 6 foot seas inside of Shelikof Strait on a 25 knot wind. Inside of Bristol Bay, southwesterlies 15 knots with a 4 foot sea. Northwesterlies from Chignik and out toward Castle Cape, 20 knots with an 8 foot sea. Southerlies across the southern Bering Coast, 35 knots with a 10 foot sea on Thanksgiving Day. All of those become westerlies. We get into Friday, 30 to 40 knot winds, the strongest from Castle Cape to Chignik, 12 to 16 foot seas across the Pacific Coast, and 11 to 15 across the Bering Sea coast for your Friday afternoon. Across the Aleutians, much stronger winds out across the west, 40 to 50 knots there, 25 to 35 foot seas, and higher gusts are expected for Thursday. Storm force winds there will be much weaker as you move eastward through the central and eastern chain. 30 to 40 knot winds expected with 13 to 18 foot seas for the Bering and 11 to 14 foot seas for the Pacific coast on Thanksgiving Day. Considerable improvement as you look out west on Friday with easterlies from Adak to Kiska, 35 knots with an 18 foot sea, 16 foot seas further west with a 35 knot wind from the north and west, and south and westerlies 15 to 30 for most other areas. For the west coast on Thursday, south and southeasterlies 30 to 35, 8 foot seas in the Kuskokwim Delta. Again, some stronger gusts along the coast and a winter weather advisory starting tomorrow at 3. South and westerlies north of Nunivak Island 25 knots, 30 knots for St. Matthew and 21 foot seas. For the North Slope, look for north and northeasterly wind there, 10 to 15 knots. Offshore winds from 20 to 30. Over the open seas, watch for heavy freezing spray, 5 to 9 foot seas there in the open waters, and 25 to 30 again on Friday. And northeasterly winds across Point Barrow, more of a westerly turn over Kaktovik with a 15 knot wind. Tonight, the next winter weather maker is moving in through the Bering Sea. Rainfall across southeast, but snow will set in across the west coast as we head into Thanksgiving Day, with 1 to 4 inches of snow across the Kuskokwim Delta expected, and snow moves in Friday for South Central. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Support comes from the University of Alaska College Savings Plan, helping you and your child save for college every step of the way, from diapers to diploma. More information at uacollegesavings.com.